A Cuban-born refugee coldly advances from a petty criminal to the top of Miami's cocaine empire. Welcome back to Movies Explained. Today's film is a crime thriller from 1983 titled Scarface. The movie begins at a Miami immigration checkpoint, where a long line of refugees waits under the hot sun, eager to start a new life in the United States. Among them is Tony Montana, a Cuban refugee with a noticeable scar on his face, dreaming of making it big. After a tough interrogation, Tony finds himself in a crowded refugee camp, tagged as an illegal immigrant, with his fate hanging in the balance. In the camp, Tony reconnects with his friend Manny. Manny has a plan. They can secure their entry into the US if they get a green card. The catch? They need to kill a political enemy from Cuba who's also in the camp. Tony, driven by his desire for success, agrees to the dangerous task. He cleverly starts a riot as a cover and successfully takes out the target, securing their green cards as a reward. Free from the camp, Tony and Manny start at the bottom, washing dishes in a food truck. Tony is frustrated. This isn't the American dream he envisioned. Manny introduces him to Omar Suarez, a mid-level drug dealer looking to hire. Tony, ambitious and hungry for more, convinces Omar to entrust him with a more lucrative task. This leads them to a high-stakes cocaine deal with Colombian dealers, signaling the start of Tony's ascent in the drug trade. Upon arrival at the hotel for the deal, Tony and his friend Angel, with extra backup from Chichi, immediately sense the tension. The Colombians' facade of hospitality thinly veils their true intentions. When discussions turn to the transaction, the situation escalates quickly, with Tony and Angel finding themselves outmaneuvered and held at gunpoint. In a harrowing turn, Tony is forced to witness the brutal murder of Angel, a moment that cements his ruthlessness and drive for survival. After Manny realizes Tony has been gone too long, decides to go check on them, sensing something might be wrong. Miraculously, Manny and Chichi burst in just in time, rescuing Tony and neutralizing the threat. One of the Colombians responsible for killing Tony's friend attempts to flee, limping down the stairs, but Tony chases him and eliminates him in the middle of the street. They successfully complete the deal, securing both the cocaine and the cash. However, this victory plants the seeds of conflict between Tony and Omar, as Omar had wanted to take credit for the operation's success. Despite Omar's bitterness, Tony boldly goes around him, delivering the goods directly to Frank Lopez, Omar's boss, and a major figure in Miami's drug world. Frank's mansion, a symbol of wealth and power, impresses Tony, making it clear how lucrative the drug business can be. Frank, both surprised and impressed by Tony's success, welcomes him into the fold with a celebratory toast. It's here that Tony spots Elvira, Frank's captivating wife, and feels an instant attraction. However, he's fully aware of the risks involved in pursuing the boss's wife. After establishing himself in Miami's drug scene, Tony visits his mother and sister in their modest home, a stark reminder of his roots compared to the opulence he's encountered. Dressed in a suit that signifies his new life, Tony attempts to reassure his family of his success and legitimacy in business. However, his mother sees through his facade, recognizing the dark path her son has chosen. On the other hand, his sister is excited to see him doing well and tries to convince her mother to accept Tony's help. Despite Tony's efforts to provide for them, his mother refuses to accept his money, unwilling to be a part of his criminal activities, and asks him to leave her home and stay away from them, especially Gina. Outside, Manny, who's been waiting for Tony, catches a glimpse of Gina, Tony's sister, and is immediately drawn to her. Tony, noticing Manny's interest, sternly warns him to stay away from Gina, aware of Manny's reputation with women. Frank sends Tony and Omar to Bolivia to meet with cocaine kingpin Alejandro Sosa. Tony's straightforward and bold approach impresses Sosa. Ignoring Omar's and Frank's reservations, Tony negotiates a massive deal to purchase cocaine, far beyond what Frank had authorized. This act of defiance cements Tony's ambition and willingness to cross boundaries to achieve his goals. Sosa recognizes a valuable asset in Tony. At that moment, Sosa hands Tony the binoculars to zoom in on a nearby helicopter. It's there that Tony sees Omar trying to resist as they throw him out of the helicopter, hanging him in the sky, killing him instantly. Tony maintains a straight face, but isn't sure if he's next. Sosa reveals Omar as a snitch and solidifies an alliance with Tony. However, he issues a stern warning to Tony never to cross him. Back in Miami, Tony's audacity brings him into conflict with Frank. Frank is infuriated by Omar's death and Tony's unilateral decision to expand their operation. Frank, however, doesn't like the idea of expanding his business further, believing he won't be able to come up with the $18 million required up front for the cocaine. Tony attempts to reassure Frank that if they find themselves short on cash, he could quickly generate a few million on the streets to cover the shortfall. However, Frank counters that their competitors in the drug trade would not tolerate Tony moving such a large volume of product, as it would mean stepping on their toes. Tony, infuriated, says that he doesn't care about the competitors and is willing to eliminate them if necessary, a statement that deeply unsettles Frank. Following Tony's outburst, Frank realizes that Tony's disregard for authority only cements his fears that Tony is uncontrollable. Frank brings up the matter of Omar, questioning Tony's confidence in Sosa's assertion that Omar was a police informant. Frank expresses regret for sending Tony to Bolivia and hints at a conspiracy between Tony and Sosa to eliminate Omar, allowing the deal to proceed and Tony to gain the upper hand. Frank ends the discussion by telling Tony to postpone his deal with Sosa, choosing not to expand his drug operations. While Tony outwardly agrees to Frank's order, upon leaving, Frank advises Tony to keep a low profile and curb his ambitions so he can last in the drug business. Tony dismisses Frank's advice, signaling a loss of respect for him. This realization makes Frank see Tony as a liability. After Tony exits, Frank contacts Mel Bernstein, a corrupt cop on his payroll, to tighten the grip on Tony and take him out for good. Meanwhile, Tony heads to a nightclub with his friend Manny and is surprised to find his sister Gina dancing there with another guy. He is then approached by Mel Bernstein, a corrupt DEA agent, who tries to extort him by revealing his knowledge of a botched drug deal with the Colombians. Tony agrees to pay Bernstein for police protection. Still reeling from the encounter with Bernstein, Tony notices Gina flirting with a man she's dancing with. While Bernstein continues talking, Tony, with a cold look on his face, watches her being escorted to the men's bathroom, obviously for dubious reasons, and decides to ignore Bernstein to rush towards the bathroom. Tony kicks the door open and reacts violently, beating the man and scolding Gina for her behavior. Feeling suffocated by Tony's overprotectiveness, Gina storms out of the club. Manny follows her to ensure she gets home safely, while Tony, attempting to calm down, sits at a table, unaware that two hitmen are observing him from across the dance floor. The atmosphere is charged with tension as the hitmen open fire, aiming to kill Tony with machine guns, causing panic as clubgoers scream and scramble for the exits. Tony is hit, but not fatally wounded. He manages to return fire from beneath the table, killing the attackers before quickly fleeing the scene in his car. After dropping Gina off at her place, where Gina questions why Manny hasn't asked her out, Manny becomes angry and explains that Tony is like a brother to him, and they could never be together. Later that night, Tony contacts Manny, urging him to meet immediately. Sensing the urgency, Manny quickly gets dressed and prepares to leave as soon as possible. Still recovering from injuries sustained during the assassination attempt, Tony, along with Manny and their friend Chi-Chi, decides to confront Frank, suspecting him of being behind the attack in the club. They plan for one of their friends to call Frank's phone at exactly 3 a.m., pretending to be one of the hitmen, to inform him that the hit failed. Upon their arrival and entry, they encounter Mel Bernstein in Frank's office, which intensifies Tony's suspicion that Frank orchestrated the hit. Frank feigns surprise about the assassination attempt and assures Tony that they will seek vengeance against those responsible. However, Tony isn't fooled by Frank's performance. It becomes clear that Tony has assumed a position of dominance, sitting at the head of the table with Frank noticeably uneasy before him. Then, at precisely 3 a.m., Frank's phone rings. He answers, hearing the message that the hit failed. Rather than denying any knowledge, Frank's response, as though he's talking about something unrelated, inadvertently confirms his involvement in the plot. Now convinced of Frank's betrayal, Manny, without any hesitation, shoots him dead. The focus then shifts to the cop, who sits arrogantly in the chair, believing that his status as a cop will make Tony hesitate to kill him. As Bernstein tries to claim innocence regarding the assassination attempt, Tony, not convinced by his act, kills him as well. As they prepare to leave, Manny notices Frank's bodyguard, Ernie, who is still in the room. Recognizing that Ernie has never wronged him, Tony offers him a job. Relieved to be spared, Ernie accepts the offer and takes a swig from a bottle of liquor to calm his nerves, grateful for his unexpected luck. With Frank and Bernstein out of the picture, Tony takes over Frank's organization and eventually marries Elvira. The deal with Sosa proceeds smoothly, making Tony the sole distributor of Sosa's product. This new venture brings in millions of dollars, allowing Tony to expand the business into a multi-million-dollar drug empire. He uses his newfound wealth to build a lavish mansion on a large, heavily guarded estate, cementing his status at the top of his empire. After Tony marries Elvira and takes over Miami's drug scene, the rush of power and money starts to mess up his home life. Elvira, who was once drawn to Tony's charm and drive, feels trapped in a luxurious but empty life. As Tony gets more obsessed with staying on top, Elvira turns to drugs to escape the emptiness of their fancy world. Their marriage, built on Tony's ambitious dreams, quickly begins to reveal the signs of his spiraling descent. Tony, now earning an enormous amount of money from drugs, tries to launder the money through a real estate company, unaware it's part of a sting operation. Caught red-handed, Tony is arrested, but later released on a $5 million bail. He meets with his lawyer, the best in Miami, who informs him that he could face 5 years in prison if convicted, though this could potentially be reduced to 3 years for good behavior. Manny suggests Tony accept the jail time, but Tony refuses, adamant about not returning to prison. He proposes offering more money to his lawyer to bribe high-level officials to dismiss the charges, but his lawyer points out the impossibility of escaping charges due to the evidence caught on tape. Subsequently, Tony is invited by Sosa to Bolivia for a meeting about a problem involving an activist investigating their operations. During the meeting with several government officials, Tony realizes his relatively minor status in the grand scheme of things. Sosa then mentions being aware of Tony's legal problems, offering to resolve them if Tony helps in assassinating the investigator, an activist who is about to publish an expose on Sosa's drug dealings, including Sosa's ties with both Bolivian and US officials. Tony agrees to the assassination, collaborating with Sosa's right-hand man, Umberto. They travel to New York City to carry out the plan. They plant a radio-controlled bomb on the car the night before. The following day, as they are tailing the car, they discover the activist's wife, and children are also inside. Tony's conscience stirs, prompting him to call off the mission. Umberto insists the hit must proceed. As they get closer to the car, and Umberto is about to press the button to detonate the bomb, Tony shoots Umberto in the face, killing him instantly. Tony's decision to kill Umberto and abort the hit proves to be a grave mistake, as the investigator now has the opportunity to publish the expose on Sosa's activities. Returning to Miami after the failed hit, Tony receives a furious call from Sosa, who reminds Tony of his warning not to cross him. Sosa vows vengeance for Tony's failure to prevent the expose, leading to a heated exchange before Sosa abruptly hangs up. This act marks the beginning of Tony's downfall, highlighting Sosa's extensive connections and power, and his readiness to deploy an army against Tony. In the midst of this turmoil, Tony visits his mother, seeking to find Gina. His mother expresses her disappointment, blaming Tony for the negative impact he's had since his arrival in Miami. After leaving his mother's house, Tony heads to Manny's house to enlist his help in locating Gina and to discuss their predicament with Sosa. However, upon his arrival, as Manny opens the door to greet Tony, he's met with a shocking sight. Gina, visibly happy, at the top of the stairs, revealing her and Manny's secret relationship. In a moment of rage, Tony shoots Manny in the stomach, a decision that horrifies Gina and marks a tragic turn in their lives. Gina, horrified, rushes to Manny's side, while Tony, frozen in shock at his own actions, learns from Gina through her tears that she and Manny were married. They had planned to surprise Tony, but it was tragically too late, as his best friend lay in a pool of blood. Ernie then enters the scene, urging Tony to flee due to the gunshot attracting attention. Ernie and Tony leave, forcibly taking Gina with them. Back at his mansion, Tony, overwhelmed by guilt over killing Manny and the dire state of his affairs, spirals into a cocaine binge. He deeply regrets his actions and experiences a panic attack at his desk, desperately trying to soothe himself with more cocaine. Gina, devastated by Manny's death, descends into a state of turmoil, confronting Tony with a mix of accusations and desperation. She provocatively challenges him, insinuating that if he intends to keep her from seeing anyone else, he might as well take her for himself. However, her seduction veils a deadly intent. She begins unloading her gun at Tony, and one of the bullets hits him in the leg. At this moment, Sosa's men breach the mansion gate after killing the guards, silently creeping toward the mansion itself. One of them uses a rope to climb up to Tony's office and unleashes a barrage from an Uzi, fatally wounding Gina. Tony reacts swiftly, tackling the assassin and pushing him off the balcony into the pool below. Meanwhile, Sosa's main force breaches the estate, storming through the mansion's front doors and killing everyone in their path. Tony clings to Gina's lifeless body. He glances at his security monitors and realizes the mansion has been breached by numerous men. At that moment, he witnesses Chi-Chi's death. Fueled by adrenaline, he grabs an AR-15 assault rifle, equipped with a grenade launcher, and engages Sosa's men. Tony kills the attackers one by one with relentless firepower, despite sustaining multiple gunshot wounds. Standing at the top of the staircase, he shouts insults and taunts the remaining assailants, who are taking cover from the grenade blasts. Eventually, Sosa's men regroup and unleash a barrage of bullets at Tony, who, despite being heavily injured, remains standing, seemingly invincible due to the effects of cocaine, feeling no pain. Continuing to provoke his attackers, Tony withstands the bullets until one of the assassins stealthily approaches from behind and delivers a fatal shotgun blast to his back. This decisive shot propels Tony over the railing, sending him plummeting into the pool below, marking his end. The assassin looks down at Tony's body floating in the water, and the camera pans to a globe statue inscribed with the words, "The world is yours," symbolizing the ironic ending of Tony's rise and fall. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos.